Welcome to the Equine Energy Medicine Podcast with your host, Audrey McLaughlin.
Hey friends, welcome to episode 029 of the Equine Energy Medicine Podcast. I'm your host, Audrey. I am an equine nutritionist, naturopath, and energy medicine practitioner. Today we're talking about testing minerals and metals for horses. So this is a test that I use very often for nutritional consultations. But many people don't realize that it is much more than just minerals and metals. And so I want to dive in to some of that today. Now, like I said, this is a test that measures the mineral content of the hair to determine primarily nutrition and metal toxicity level. Now, a small sample of hair, usually about 1/4 gram or 1 tablespoon. The labs that I use take 0.25 grams of hair. But you take the hair from the mane closest to the skin, and when it's submitted, it gives an accurate overview of the body of mineral levels in the body tissues, of any imbalances, toxins, overloads, deficiencies, and kind of these key mineral balances that may need correction. Now, it also tells us, could these issues be caused by stress, by medication, by some sort of pollution or toxin the horse is getting into in the field, or from feeding? So it's a really, really useful test. And some of the top questions that I'm asked about it are, well, is this something that my vet can run? Like, why isn't my vet doing this? And in general, this is something that you find alternative practitioners doing more than traditional veterinarian practitioners. And it's not that it's not, a good test. The US EPA accepts these tests to determine toxic levels. It has been used really globally since 2006. Well, it's been used heavily since 2006. The same technology is the same technology is used in hair drug tests, and it really gives you a look for at least the last 90 days. And so what I like to tell people is, when veterinarian diagnosis fails, then the problem is often nutritional, energetic, or biomechanical. And often those are things that your traditional veterinarian education isn't necessarily trained to see. And so people say, well, I can just do a blood test. Well, interestingly, blood tests can't detect trace minerals other than, because your blood is the great, or the horse's blood also is the great compensator, right? So when a tissue needs more minerals, it'll pull sodium, right? But it always works to rebalance that very, very quickly. So it doesn't give us an idea of what minerals and vitamins are actually reaching the tissues. Heavy metals, for example, can't be detected in the blood except for after immediate acute exposure. And so what we're looking at with a test like a hair tissue mineral analysis test, or I call it the minerals and metals test, is that deeper seated chronic issue that might be going on. So when a horse has hoof problems, right, that's a chronic issue that it's generally, not always, generally not an acute issue, meaning it's something that has been festering and going on for a little while. I find it particularly important to test and not guess when you're working with equine, because they can't tell us what's wrong. All we can do is assess, right? So when we use something where we can have exact information on, these are the vitamins and minerals that this horse is deficient in, these are the metals that are toxic, these are the other signs and symptoms that I can see from the lab report and match those up to what's going on with the animal. Whereas when I'm working with a human, I don't always recommend doing a test like this first, because often we can have an open communication, a very literal communication, more literal than with an animal, about what is going on in their body and how different things are impacting them. So I always recommend, before you start supplementing your horse's diet with things like zinc and copper and selenium and all of these things, that you do a hair tissue mineral analysis test. And you should do them at least annually. If there's a chronic issue that we're trying to overcome, we might do them a little bit more frequently than that, but at least annually. And I will put the link in the show notes here on this episode information on where you can go to find the test that I provide. I use the lab that has the patent on the test, and it does come with a consultation. But if you have someone in your area that is doing these tests, then by all means, I'm just trying to get you the information out there to educate. And I do these tests all over the United States. I can't do them in New York and I think Kansas. I know New York because they won't let us send lab samples through the mail. So when we're looking at a hair mineral analysis test, we're really looking at unlocking the horse's performance, right? So the horse's physical and cognitive abilities can be optimized using these mineral analysis tests. Nutrient mineral levels and their ratios determine how well the horse's cells function, and that function impacts their physical, energetic, and cognitive performance. And so when we're looking at the results from a test like a minerals and metals test, the goal is to correct body chemistry and really improve functioning using the test results as a guide for super targeted supplementation and nutrition. If we're thinking about performance horses specifically, then you can think of how many times you have given your horse a stimulant or a drug to relax or ease pain. We know that these substances affect and impact the horse's biochemistry. They actually can create biochemical chaos inside of the body, which leads to all sorts of undesirable health and soundness consequences. So it's really a good idea rather than guessing on, oh, my horse needs this, my horse needs that, my horse needs CBD, my horse needs electrolytes or whatever it is. It's really much better to balance biochemistry intelligently using test results rather than guessing. And even if your horse is on the ultimate forage diet, right? If you've been around here long, you know that I'm not a fan of feeding horses grain. So the ultimate forage diet, you still have to have that targeted forage balancer that is bridging the gaps in the forage that that animal is eating. So let's talk about what you can find out from the minerals and metals test. You have to know that these minerals and metals tests are not used to diagnose disease. Veterinarians diagnose disease. So when the veterinarian medicine fails or the diagnosis fails or the horse doesn't get better, then let's look at a minerals and metals test. And some people like to look at them first so that they have an idea going in of what to target with the vet. So you can find out from a simple hair minerals and metals test whether or not the horse has a heavy metal toxicity. A lot of people don't think about this because they assume that their horse doesn't have anything. But what are the fields that horse grazes in sprayed with anything? Are the neighboring fields sprayed with anything? Does your horse drink tap water or well water? Water is often tested for safe levels for humans, but that doesn't always equate safe levels when you multiply it by 10 or 5 or 10 or 15, depending on how large the horse is and how small the human is, right? So heavy metal toxicity can be a real concern and can contribute to a lot of things. Number 2, it tests for mineral deficiencies and imbalances. And a lot of people don't realize minerals are the spark plugs of life. For a horse, salt is the spark plug of their life. It is involved in almost every enzymatic reaction in a horse's body. And without those enzymatic reactions, life doesn't exist. Okay. So it helps everything work better when minerals are balanced. It helps their nutrition work better. It helps their muscles work better. It helps any kind of energy work, body work, any of those things that you're either doing yourself or paying to have done work so much better. The third thing we can look at in a mineral and metals test is metabolic rate. We can see if it's moving fast or slow. We can look at stress levels. We can look at thyroid function, nervous system imbalances. We can see how well they're synthesizing protein, which is especially important if you're switching from a concentrated grain feed to a more natural forage-based feed. We can see inflammation levels, energy levels. We can see cognition issues beginning to form. We can see liver and kidney stress. We can see carbohydrate tolerances and blood sugar imbalances. Okay. That's so important, especially for these mystery, lameness, soundness, foundering type issues. So hopefully that helps to provide a little bit more understanding for all of the questions that I'm getting on the hair minerals and metals test and why you might find it beneficial for your horse. It's also really beneficial for humans, but that's for my other podcast, my human practice. So hopefully that answers some questions. Let me know if you guys have any more questions. I know you know how to find me on TikTok and on Instagram. You can always go to equineenergymed.com and there's loads of contact information, loads of ways to contact me there. And of course, I'll have the link in the show notes for this. So as always, I am rooting for you guys. I will see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Equine Energy Medicine Podcast. Ratings and reviews are always appreciated. We'll catch you in the next episode.